Hello, Nissa Outdoor Schoolers. Welcome back to the third week of Outdoor School. And this week I'm out here at the Owyhee River and Owyhee Dam outdoor site that a lot of your peers have been visiting the last couple of weeks. And the road in here is a nice paved road. Took me about probably about 35 minutes. I was driving kind of slow, enjoying the scenery from Nissa. And it's a really accessible site. This is a public access site down here to be able to get to the river, to go visit the park over there. And our outdoor school porta potties are still there, and there's also a bathroom behind. And you can see there's people who camp here. I am also a little bit higher, so I can get a good view of the dam in the background. And really, I can just kind of make out a straight line right there. That's the top of the Owyhee Dam that blocks the Owyhee River behind it and creates the Owyhee Reservoir. So if you follow the road, keep going up from the dam, you can probably see it snake across the hill over there and up to the top. That's the Owyhee Reservoir. Big lake. There's swimming, there's some fishing, you can go flatwater kayaking, you can rent a paddleboard, there's a state park there, and also camping. But wonderful recreation area out here, and I'm so glad today to be joining you on video from this site. So for the third week, we're going to look at the booklet, work through. Last week we changed the videos a little bit from the booklet, but this week on page 24, we go back to discussing a stream cross-section and profile. So here in the video and in this view, notice how the highlands or the uplands are up here, the edge of the canyon, and then we go into a V, very sharp drop down to the riverbed below, and then back up the other side of the canyon. And we're not going to walk out that whole cross-sectional profile, but what we'll do is look along the floodplain and along the flat sides of the river, and then measuring from a line of horizontal, we'll measure our steps across the stream, and then I'll use a stadia rod in the video, but also they used meter sticks last week to measure the depth from a line of horizontal to the stream. And we will end up, I guess we'll just have to graph it and see what we'll end up seeing. But I'm sure you can start imagining the shape. And that creates what we call a cross section, or looking at something from a sideways view. There's also an opportunity to do a profile, which means going from along the stream or longitudinally. We'll start at a little bit higher elevation, and then I'll walk and use my GPS to, as I walk down in elevation, I'll read off in meters or feet. We'll maybe switch the units, and we'll graph the number of steps and the decreasing elevation, just so we can see the longitudinal profile of this stream as well. Okay, and that kind of sets the stage to really talk about the watershed. Where does this water come from? Where does the Owyhee water come from? This water in front of me comes from directly out of the dam, or behind the dam in the reservoir. But of course, where does the reservoir water come from? Upstream in the Owyhee watershed, being incredibly vast, goes all the way into northern Nevada. There's a town in northern Nevada called Owyhee, Nevada, and that's near the easternmost headwaters of the Owyhee. On page 30, there's a map of the Cascadia region, which is the watersheds of the Fraser and Columbia, and all of their tributaries. And we are down here in the very southeastern, or close to the very southeastern corner of this, in the Owyhee-Shoshone River region. And that's the watershed of the Owyhee that meets the Snake River just outside of Nissa. And then, of course, the Malheur River, for which our county gets its name, has a large watershed that also runs into the Snake River just north of Ontario. So on this map, you can, at home, draw a star if you can recognize where approximately Ontario, Nissa, Adrian, our Vale, our Four Rivers community area is. Okay. Then we will, after talking a little bit about the water and doing those exercises, the stream profile, it's time that we should talk a little bit about the desert as well. The riparian area is the water area with sustaining green plants is very, very important, but we also want to look out at the desert and some of the desert plants that are out there. And so it may be difficult in the video to see, but there are some wonderful yellow blooms, and even up high on the cliffs, some purple blooms up there. Probably the plant Salvia dorii, or they call it purple sage. And then the yellow flowers here are arrowleaf balsam root. Of course, the shrubs that are all interspersed through here also have their names. What we'll do is a little bit of plant investigation, some functional groups, which is, you can kind of think about it as the small things like herbs, the shrubs, and the trees, but also in relationship to the river, the proximity to the river and riparian area. Then you might be wondering, and I've always wondered this sometimes, is it okay to collect plants? And of course it is. You can collect certain types of plants that are populated or populous. So that's the first rule, is that we make sure that there are enough of those types of plants in the area before we ever thinking about collecting a seed or a root or a flower or anything from it. Let's make sure that there is a large population to continue to grow there. So the rule of thumb is about 20. If you can see 20 of that species, then you can think about collecting one as a sample. Then also the other thing we should really monitor is there are some plants that we should just never collect. And in Oregon actually has a law that the lily family, which comes from a bulb, the iris family, which comes from kind of a tuberous root, as well as the orchid family, which also comes from kind of a root, and they all grow from the same place all the time, and then they spread and grow more bulbs, kind of like garlic. So, garlic is actually in the lily family. So those are monocots, and because they grow from the bulb and they're very, very delicate, we don't collect those species. We don't collect the flowers or the bulbs or anything from that plant. They're protected. That means that pretty much everything else, as long as you are doing a personal kind of scientific collection and non-commercial use, then you can collect so many plants. And today in our book, we'll use, after the plant functional groups on page 31, we'll actually use a plant press to investigate some of these desert plants and then save some to take home. So, okay, thank you very much, and we'll get on to our exercises. See you later. Okay, check this out. Oh, there you are. Check this out. There is a horizontal, or approximately horizontal, it's got some slack in it, piece of yarn going across the river. Probably difficult to see in the video, but it's there. And there's sort of a few logs, a few branches sitting across the river right here in this pile. And the yarn is tied to a willow about 15 steps back, and across here and tied to a willow about 15 steps back this way. So on your page 25, on this really broad river here, we are going to use about a half a square is a step. Okay, so that means there is 76 overall, and we have about 38 at the midway. And I will walk And the direction that I'm looking towards the dam, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and label that. Looking in that direction is to the south. There's totally some frogs over here geeking out. Oh, beautiful. And that means then to my left is the east, and to my right is the west, and then behind me would be to the north. So that's important because, you know, the cross-sectional view is going to have the shape of this side of the bank and the shape of that side of the bank. So what I'll do is use my my meter stick to measure, and I only really need a meter stick because this is fairly shallow. And for every step that I take, I'll record the number of centimeters, okay, and we can drop that down and begin to graph that. Actually, we should do this in feet and a half. Okay, so every 2 squares a foot. Okay, and I will round to the half or the quarter foot. So that means a half would be 1 box, a half of a foot, and then a quarter of a foot, right, would be a half of one of the boxes. Okay, so we have then the ability to do essentially an XY graph here. You know the units on either side, the number of steps. I'm going to go ahead and cross this out and put feet as my unit if that's what we're going to use. And I'll go ahead and try to walk across and measure and yell out. I'm going to try to use a microphone, yell out my my data, and you can record. Okay, so let's set up and see how we can work this out.